Hey, this is Anthony Meisner with Land Title. I came to bring you your Boulder County update for the month. Let's dive right into the details. I think the most important thing you can look at here is just rising inventory market, kind of followed by this stable buyer position. There's a lot to unpack, but most likely what you need to remember is Denver Metro and Boulder County don't always operate at the same speed. So when Denver Metro is seeing a 78 or so, 90% increase in inventory sometimes, and we're experiencing a 24% increase, it's not necessarily that we don't have a lot of listings coming to market. We felt the bulk of our inventory increase start to take place a year ago, well before they did. Now, we are already in a high inventory environment with an increase in inventory still. So there are ample amount of sellers out there, and the under contracts came in strong again for another month. Here's the issue: is we've kind of been in this weird plateau for March, April, and May as far as under contracts are concerned. So our sales data is going to reflect that as well. The peak of the market usually is in May. Here we were with the peak of the market really was in March, where the buyers were the most active. And we've kind of been in this, people are trying to hang in there, right? Buyers are still trying to stay active, but interest rates just aren't cooperating yet. Now, I'm not saying that they won't this year. I think they probably still could. But for right now, that's kind of where we're at. I'm going to cover some of the attached and detached stuff separately, but for right now, let's kind of unpack the listings and the active units of inventory. Boulder City has 721 listings active on the market. That is only 21% more than last year, but that is so much inventory, right? That almost represents half the county's inventory, and it's due to price range, right? Just people at that price point, when they were borrowing money cheap, it was a lot easier. Now that they're not borrowing money as cheap, they're really experiencing a different situation. So tougher market to sell at a higher price range. Erie, 230 units of inventory. It's a ton of inventory. Longmont only has 377 units. It's a much bigger marketplace. So kind of watching this unfold is really interesting. Lafayette, Louisville, Superior, those cities in the middle of the county, they all are experiencing a much higher level of inventory than used to, but the month supply of inventory is a lot less than some of the other lying areas. So interesting stuff. The shift in the inventory is really taking place across the board, as you can see at this point. If you look at it by by month supply of inventory, 6 months in the city of Boulder is a lot of inventory, right? We're used to feeling like 3 months and it feels fairly balanced. Now, when we experience 6 months, sellers are really struggling, right? Because buyers are asking for a lot and they're going to have to give it to them to kind of get these deals closed. So you can see the shift in the inventory trend. The county as a whole is at 4.5 months of inventory, but a lot of the other cities are less than that. Look at Longmont, Erie, Niwot, Louisville, all of them under 4 months of inventory still. NAR would say that that's, maybe seller favored, but it's not seller favored. It's very clear that there's a lot of concessions taking place. Buyers are asking for a lot, and the buyer's trend is that the buyer is in control. Superior, 5.5 months of inventory is a lot of inventory. They're definitely feeling the pinch there. And when you're out in, somewhere like Lafayette, that might kind of represent some sort of middle ground for the county, closer to that average number. Now, if we look at the days in MLS, this is pretty different. So let's take a look at the detached inventory first. The city of Boulder is at 37, Louisville is at 38, Lafayette's at 31, Superior's at 29, right? Those all feel fairly fast. Buyers are putting stuff under contract, things are moving. More of the luxury side of things, when you look at something like Niwot, 54 days is a lot slower. But, basically we're at the peak or one of the fastest months, right? May and June are always usually both pretty quick. Sometimes into July even. Those under contract numbers haven't been on the market very long because they went under contract in June or, whatever that looks like. But this is the faster part of the market. So as we look at the speed of the market, detached seems to take about a month, right? And then the higher price stuff is obviously going to take a little bit longer. When we look at it in the attached side of things, this is a much different situation. Superior has 85 days in MLS in the fastest time of the year. So that's very, very tough. If you look at Louisville, Lafayette, Erie, Longmont, you're talking more of that 50 to 60 day range. It is, 1.5, 2 months of inventory. Well, there's more than that in inventory, right? But the good stuff is selling quicker. So 45, 50 days probably to be expected. The craziest one out here is you have the most inventory in the city of Boulder, and the city of Boulder in attached has sold the fastest. What this really looks like as we kind of unpack the data is there's been a lot of luxury sales the luxury stuff at the really high end has been doing better than a lot of the other product, and a lot of it's just sitting. So since it isn't going under contract, it's not getting factored into this data. This one kind of tells us a lot by price range. So our solds by price range, over 2.5 million, we've had a ton of activity this year. 82% from 2.5 to 3 million. 3 million plus, we've had 42% more sales than we did this time last year. That's an additional 15 homes. We have 140 on the market, and we only sold 9 last month, but these are record numbers, right? So that's very exciting to see. If you're selling homes between 1.5 and 2.5 million, that's where the pinch is, right? When the stock market's not doing well, they got to take a jumbo loan. They're probably leaning on their portfolios to buy the house. They're just uncertain, and people are not making decisions like they used to. And then you have the bulk of the market under 1.5 million. Very rate sensitive. Most people here are getting loans still, although in Boulder County, we do see a lot less people get loans. You still have at least a third of people paying cash, but you do see this taking a much slower pace in the market. So it's very similar to where we were a year ago. This market feels like it did a year ago for a lot of them, right? A little bit more inventory, but a little bit more buyers. So that's not so bad. Now, if we look at it by month supply of inventory and days on market, let's look at it separate. Detached, look at this. Under 600,000, 2 months of inventory, it is very much still a seller's market. You get from 600 to 1 million, we're talking more of a balanced market. It's 3 months of inventory out there, you get 1 million to 1.5 million. 4.5 months of inventory, really starting to get buyer favored, just starting to lean that way. But then you get 1.5 to 2.5, like I said, very clearly it's becoming a buyer's market. And then you have 16 months of inventory in the luxury space, the higher end, ultra luxury space even, right? There's so many homes to look at. They're taking longer to sell, of course, right? Because that's what stereotypically happens when you have less buyers. But the vast majority of all of them are moving at 30 days, 35 days. So if it's priced right, there is a buyer for the house. If the house is buttoned up, it looks good. So that's really exciting to see. This one, on the other hand, is probably a lot more gloom and doom than kind of the sunshine and roses we see in the detached market. The luxury stuff obviously is really in line with a lot of what we saw in the detached luxury market. If you look at some of those under 1 million, though, really everything under 1 million, we got 5 months of inventory. This is a buyer's market. Now, you can see that it's taking longer to sell a lot of them. Depends on the price range, but if you're 800 to 1 million, it could take 85 days. If you're $600,000 to $800,000 townhouse out in the county or even in the city of Boulder, you really could see that stuff taking 45 or more days, right? So it's taking longer to sell a lot of this. Last month, though, the 500,000 to 600,000 range sold in 31. So there's still a lot of hope for this market. It's not the sky is falling. It's just, beware that when you're working with clients in this space, it is going to be much more challenging as a seller. Okay, I'm going to skip the sales stuff because I have a better slide for you. This is really important to look at the average sold price. Average sold price has been very consistent in the city of Boulder. Trailing 12 months, 1%, hasn't changed much. Louisville and Superior, we've seen the Marshall Fire effect where we built more expensive homes, so the prices have gone up, even though a lot of the homes really haven't changed in value. So be careful there. If you look at somewhere like Erie, we have tipped past that point of where there's, all this resale is competing with new construction. There's a lot of inventory, and there is downward pricing pressure. We're feeling 1.7% drop in sales price. And then Longmont, very stable, right? Kind of talked about this throughout all this time lately where, Longmont has had a lot of stability in its pricing, and it's been a really good buy, I think, over time. You look at the attached market, though, this is where it's rough, right? You got to paint a picture about how to get out of this product. You might be basically getting less than you paid for it. And that's just a tough pill to swallow. The city of Boulder shows 4% increase, but keep in mind, a lot of luxury sales, not a lot of lower end sales. So it's actually just a different composition. I would argue it's probably very similar to the rest of these. You've got 7% drop, 6% drop, 8% drop in some of these. This is a very, very tough pill to swallow. So keep that in mind when you're working with those people. This is the sold one I like to look at right now. It kind of paints a picture of what we're experiencing. The total market year to date is down 2% in sales, but 2% is only like 30 or 40 units. We could easily make that up throughout the year. So I still think that this could be a very good market this year. But where is it taking place, right? Louisville is a very special place. Superior, same thing. Lots of homes on the market right now. A lot of them are rebuilds. They're selling a lot. So we're over 20% increase than we were this time last year. The vast majority of the county, the city of Boulder, Erie, Longmont, very similar to a year ago. And then Niwot and Lafayette, minus 23%. So these are tough ones, right? Some are selling slower than they were before. That being said, the last slide I wanted to share with you is our sold price to list price slide. Remember, this doesn't include price drops or concessions, but it definitely gives you a sort of a representation of, based on price range, what you should expect. Concessions are really common right now. So if you're under $1 million, like 60% of deals are having concessions, and then a third of deals are being paid for in cash, so they don't really need concessions. So there you are, we're in a position where almost all deals are having some sort of price adjustments, even though it doesn't come out in this data very well. If you have any other questions, you need any other market information, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always here to help. This is Anthony at Land Title. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel.